Good afternoon. I am Stephen Bosacker, the still relatively new Director of Urban Policy at GMF. In that role, I get to be a shameless advocate for the role that cities play in solving for global issues. Having served as a chief of staff to a member of Congress, a Minnesota governor, and then as city manager of Minneapolis, Minnesota for a number of years, I've come to admire the common sense, the tenacity, and the ingenuity that mayors, city managers, local community leaders exhibit really on a daily basis on issues large and small that land at their doorstep. One such issue of the extremely large variety is climate change. And it really is Exhibit A on where cities around the globe have stepped up to take a lead through innovative and tangible actions toward workable solutions. Let me say a word about the urban team at GMF. We try to isolate the promising practices and policies being used by cities on both sides of the Atlantic on issues like building inclusive economies, managing migration, or finding new creative ways to involve marginalized communities. And then we work to spread that information horizontally to other cities, or maybe more importantly, vertically, where there are gaps at a national or international policy level. Today, in the spirit of the overall theme of disruption, we're presenting a Brussels Forum First, a panel comprised entirely of mayors. And in this case, it's 3 mayors that have taken specific actions to kick the carbon habit and make a wholesale transition to renewable energy sources. 2 of the 3 were part of an EU-funded program we called, appropriately, the Energy Allies. This project was designed to leverage the expertise of non-governmental actors or civil society alongside local governments to develop successful partnership models. Having worked in the innovation space for the last 12 years in cities, if we're not breaking down the walls of City Hall and any divisions within on problems like this, we're not going to make any progress. The 3rd mayor, the Honorable Chiara Appendino of Torino, Italy, brings the same level of commitment that will be required if we're going to have any hope of making the kind of change needed to save our planet. Her commitment's so great that even when her flight was canceled to Berlin this morning, in her connecting city, she ran back to Torino, and we're going to hopefully have her live via video stream here shortly. We'll see if, fingers crossed. In addition, Torino was part of our Transatlantic Cities Lab, where we partnered Torino with the city of Portland, Oregon, and helped both of them accelerate their sustainability initiatives. I'm going to leave it to this distinguished panel to share the successes and challenges of each city's quest. And to facilitate that discussion, we are pleased to have a friend and former GMF fellow, a current GMF fellow, as well as an MSNBC anchor and journalist, Richard Louie, back with us. Richard, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Stephen. I'd like to welcome up our mayors to have a seat, and I am looking forward to listening to your opening remarks, as well as some of the great ideas that you're going to provide to us. And I will start with by the way, we do have Chiara Appendino there in our video stream. You are on air, as we say, Mayor, if you can hear us. Great. Her ears are coming in right now.
Okay, yes, I do hear you now.
All right, you can hear us then. So this is great.
Yes, I do.
All the way from Turin, we have the mayor there, Appendino. Thank you for being here. Mayor,
Thank you. Sorry for not being there physically.
All right, well, great. We're going to get to you in just a second. We're going to have opening remarks here on the floor if you can see us. You know, we had a great discussion before we walked out here. And so I'm really interested in your opening remarks here as we look at some of the solutions, the problems that you've been addressing. So please, the mayor of Heidelberg, Eckart Würzner.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here as the mayor of a wonderful city in Germany, which is called Heidelberg, a university town. So we have a lot of activists. We are a green city, and I'm very proud that before we speak as mayors here, we had the activists from the young generation speaking to us, because this is like a wake-up call for us. But I must say, I'm now 12 years the mayor of this wonderful city. I'm also the city manager, so I'm having the political and also the management responsibility. And we as mayors, we have already formed an initiative which we called the Mayors for Friday, if you might say this. We're not so called, but we're going in this direction to show best results. So what we have done, for example, in Heidelberg is reduce the total energy demand of all municipal buildings, kindergartens, by more than 50% over the last 10 years, without having money. So how we do this? Using private money from companies investing in our schools and have a clear contract, which we call energy contracts, who give them the possibility to earn money and us to implement very quickly new technical solutions in our existing buildings. Or we transform our mobility system, which is very complicated. Today, we have about 69% of all citizens using bicycle, going per foot, or using the mass transport system, 69%. The rest is using still cars, but I think this is a very good quote. But if we're going along for with a clear commitment, we noticed that we still didn't reach the target. This is our problem. So we have already achieved a quite good level, but still we need more actions, and therefore we need also those activists from the local level, which gives us the power to go much further. Many thanks.
Mayor McGovern.
Thank you, and thank you to the German Marshall Fund for having me here today and for all the work you do every day. Unlike another elected official in the United States, I actually believe in science, and I couldn't help it. And the science is telling us that our world is in trouble. And so the simple answer to the question of can and should municipalities take a leading role in addressing climate change is yes. We have no choice. We need to. And so let me tell you just quickly a little bit about Cambridge. Cambridge is a city of 115,000 people in 6 square miles. We are the 8th most densely populated city in the United States, the 4th largest city in Massachusetts. We are home to 2 relatively well-known universities, MIT and Harvard. And we're also home to Kendall Square. And Kendall Square has the highest concentration of biotech companies in the world. And that cuts both ways. The challenge is that labs use a tremendous amount of energy, and about 80% of our energy is used by those labs. The benefit, and this goes a little bit to your Eckart, about the private funding, the tax base brought on by the commercial industry in Cambridge has allowed us to do things that other cities simply have not been able to do. For example, we are building 3 brand new schools that will be net zero at a cost of $500 million without raising any taxes or without any state or federal assistance. We have been implementing more bike lanes. We have the lowest rate of driving of any city in the United States. We have also taken other local action. We were the largest city on the East Coast to ban plastic bags. We have banned polystyrene. We are currently writing an ordinance to ban single-use plastic. We have citywide composting, and we have developed a net zero action plan to get Cambridge to be a net zero city by 2050. We are not new to this conversation. The first ordinance passed by the City Council to address climate change was in 1994, and our first citywide plan to come up with a city climate change plan was in 2002. So we have been a leader in this area for quite a long time. We also work internationally. We were part of the German Marshall Fund effort last year. We have a partnership with Copenhagen where we're sharing ideas. And we're also working with other cities across the country. We all signed a "We're Still Here" pledge when Trump took the United States out of the Paris Accord. Cities, universities, companies said, that doesn't speak for us. we're not leaving, we're not changing our commitment to addressing climate change. So there is a tremendous amount that municipalities can do and are doing. Massachusetts is leading the way in the country, and Cambridge is leading the way in Massachusetts, and our commitment is unwavering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Appendino, I hope you can hear us. If your opening remarks, please. We'd love to hear from you.
First of all, I'm really sorry that I'm not there physically, as you said, but I had a problem with your airplane, and I really wanted to be at least with you with using new technologies. Well, 2 words only on our city. Torino is the 4th city in Italy, and we have, as a city, about 900,000 people living. And it's an industrial city. I mean, it's well known because of FCA, which is ex-Fiat, and because of the space economy. And the city is changing very much because in the last years, also thanks to the Olympic Games that we had in 2006, the city has changed very much. It's becoming more a cultural city. So we have these 2 very important parts that are the industry that is facing innovation and is changing and is facing the big challenges such as autonomous guide or self-driving cars, and the space economy, and we have a very interesting and wonderful cultural site, and so we have visitors that are increasing. So actually, we are physically in a very difficult place, which is the so-called Pianura Padana, and this means that Torino, my city, unfortunately, because it's geographically in such a space, is one of the most polluted city, I'm talking about air pollution, in Europe. So what are we doing? First of all, we're working on the physical infrastructure, which means, for example, that we just became a plastic-free city. We are investing on extending the possibility by 2020. I'm mayor, it's 3 years that I'm mayor, so in my 5 years, I will bring to the whole city the possibility to recycle, obviously, waste. We are working on public transportation, so we are increasing public transportation. We have new buses that do not pollute as the old ones. We are building and we're working on a new metro line. And these are examples of what is a physical infrastructure. So a community, a city, needs to invest in the physical infrastructure to face the challenge of pollution and climate change. But the most important thing is let's say, immaterial infrastructure, which is the cultural approach. So I think that a city, to face really the challenges of climate change, that is a risk that we don't see. That is the most difficult thing that I'm facing. I mean, people see, for example, a risk that can be, I don't know, water increasing in the river, and they see it, but they don't see air pollution. They don't see climate change. So since they don't see the risk, the most difficult thing is to create the immaterial infrastructure to face that change, to understand that risk. And so we're investing in communicating, we're investing in engaging the people to understand what is the risk and help us with the physical infrastructure. So for example, recycling, banning plastic, a new metro line, increasing public transportation to understand the risk and use the solutions that we are helping. But the 2 things have to go together. And it's not easy because what we are really feeling is that, for example, when I ban the use of cars that are very, and I did it, that are very, that pollute very much the air, we have people that are obviously very, very angry because they don't understand what's happening, what they're seeing, and they don't feel the risk. So we have to work on both things, material infrastructure and immaterial infrastructure, which is the community. And mayors can do that because they have a direct contact with the people.
Mayor, I'd now like all of you to pull out your phones if you can. A quick question for you to help our mayors reflect on what you're thinking. And of course, we will have questions and answers at the latter part of this session. The question is very straightforward if you pull out your app, and that is, let's get a sense for the moment about what you think. On a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest level, what is your level of concern about the consequences of global warming and climate change? 1 to 5. If you pull that out, let's see what most of our conferees think here. So far, not registering. On a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest level, what is your level of concern about the consequences of global warming and climate change? Very high now at 61% with the first numbers in. Very low, 0%. Low is 5.3. Medium 8.8, and high 24.6. Mayor Würzner, surprising at all, or pretty much what you think?
Yeah, it's a very good result, but the reality looks a little bit different if you go into the political debate, because mostly if you have the discussion about the city budget or the state budget, you notice that all the investment, if we are talking about the material points, more infrastructure for mass transport system, better support also for cities to implement those structures, you notice that the subsidies are nearly stabilized. They are not pumped up as it should be. So it's mostly the role of the city itself to take over this leading position. It's the same situation in the United States, where you really notice that the cities are taking this leading position, and the state is not really the driving unit anymore. That's the reason why we're going this direction, and that's the reason why we're starting new networks, working together with the German Marshall Fund, or what we have created now, what we called the Covenant of Mayors. It's an organization of more than 10,000 cities, and I'm pleased to be in the World Board to say we have a clear commitment, we have accepted our targets, we had the political debate that we wanted to become CO2-free city till the year 2050, and we help us, because if the state is not doing, we're doing.
Mayor, why are mayors the right people to be doing this?
Well, one reason is that we are the closest to the people.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier on a municipal level at times to get things done than on the federal level. And the reality is that the cities and mayors, we're going to be the first ones dealing with climate change. It's going to be, I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but a pretty large percentage of Cambridge is in a floodplain. Those neighborhoods are, unfortunately, are lower income neighborhoods. And so when the Charles River or the Mystic River, that both rivers that flow through Cambridge flood, it's going to be our communities that are going to have to deal with it firsthand. And so there is no other option, right? There is no other option for us and on the municipal level. And again, because of our connection with residents, with the community, it's easier. Cambridge believes very strongly in collaboration. So when we developed our net zero plan, it wasn't a top-down model. It wasn't the government saying, here's the plan. We brought Harvard, MIT, our business community, local residents. We have a number of local activist groups that are in Cambridge. Everybody at the table talking about how do we solve this problem and how do we all buy in to a plan to move us forward. So cities can do that in a way that the federal and even the state government cannot.
So those tables aren't always a lot of fun to be on, though.
Not always.
No, right, yeah. So how did you bring everybody around the table to sing Kumbaya at the end?
Pizza.
Pizza?
Yeah. Lots of pizza.
A little bit of light beer, maybe?
Lots of pizza. You know, you don't always get to a Kumbaya moment.
Right.
Right? I mean, not everybody who walked away from that, from participating in that thought we went far enough.
Right.
Some people, some of the commercial folks that took part might have thought we went a little too far because we're increasing our demands on commercial development to be sustainable, to build sustainable buildings. So you don't always get to a place where everybody feels that it's perfect or everyone feels that it's happy 100%. But at the end of the day, if you don't get buy-in from all of the partners in your community and all the stakeholders in your community, you're going to be continuing to push that boulder up a hill.
Mayor Appendino, how do you get small kumbayas? How do you get small rocks up the hill?
Fight. I mean, it's true, as the mayor was saying, that we as the mayors have the most possibility to change because we have, and to make the change because we have the contact with the people. But it's also true that changing habits of people is very difficult because, for example, when I say we all agree that we have to do something for climate change. But when you start saying that you have to reduce, for example, the amount of meat you're eating, do we all agree? When you start asking that you have to leave your car at home and use the bus, do we really all agree? When we ask the people to recycle, which takes more time, do we really all agree and all do it? So that's the big difficult part, because when you have to change your own habits, then it's the big challenge. So I think as mayors, we have to show the way and continue fighting, even if very often we hear the words of the people that do not agree with what you're doing. But actually, I am sure, and I mean what's happening all around the world, and as is saying that, there is a big part of the population, especially youth, that is aware and is ready for that change. So we just have to continue and walk and walk and walk. You want to bicycle? I got the bicycle, now I have to just go on cycling.
Mayor, so how do you describe climate change to your residents, your voters? Yeah. How
In
do you
Italy,
describe
it's
it?
me.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we are also a place, I mean, the city, we have a very big river, the Po River, and it's also an area where there can be a flood. I always tell them, we had a flood 2 years ago. I always say, do you see that river? That river, the water is increasing, we had a flood. You see that risk? Yes. Okay. I always say, well, with climate change, it's much worse because you don't see it, but it's going on. And we actually are feeling it. Yesterday, we had 50 degrees Celsius here in Torino. I mean, it's not normal. We are 1 hour from the mountains. So we also start feeling it, okay? I think that people are aware, they're starting to be aware, but the very difficult thing is to change habits. And that's why we have to work as mayors to make people understand that we all have that responsibility. You can't just ask politicians to do something. We have to do it. We are doing it. Some are doing it more, some are doing it less, but it's a whole community that has to do that. So we're trying to engage people of the community, influencers, people that believe in this, and show how we can change our behavior to really have an impact on climate change.
Mayor Würzner, how do you sell it? How do you sell this?
Yeah, how do we sell it? I think it's, in my opinion, it has a lot to do with behavior and understanding. But if you're going, for example, to a school, and then ask you, and you're the head of the school, are you willing to cooperate with the city? So you reduce the energy demand of your building, and we help you to get money for computers, whatever. That's what we have done. So we achieved about 25% of all the schools who sign a contract with the city. So if they reduce the energy bill, but by just changing their behavior, they achieve already a reduction of nearly 20 to 25%. Nobody cares about, because at the beginning everybody was a little bit nervous about this.
Right.
But then we had an award after 1 year. So the schools who are taking part get double of the money they normally get for books, computers, and else. So by just reducing the energy bill, we have more money to subsidize the schools with important education programs. Or if you're talking with small and medium enterprises, how can you support them? What we're doing is we're giving them free advice for energy reduction concepts or waste reduction concepts. Now, at the beginning, not so much SMEs wanted to cooperate with us. But through this program, we have now more 100 companies who are working together. For example, the bakery, using the heat, which they were not using before, for preheating or pre-cooling the ovens for producing bread. Now, the same bakery has doubled the money free by reducing the energy bill for better ingredients for their products. And they can be better on the market with a new, more green economic growth. So these are concrete results, but
Right.
you have to create this structure.
Sure. So how does the rubber hit the road here then? That was a great idea of ovens that you brought up. What's one of the things that you've implemented on the ground to give us a tangible idea here, Mayor McGovern?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think, I agree with my fellow mayors about changing behavior. And, I have to admit I'm a little lucky being the mayor of Cambridge. Cambridge is a very progressive city, and so there's not a lot of convincing that I have to do. If anything, it's people who want to go incredibly fast, and government sometimes doesn't move as quickly as folks in the community would like. So I don't really have the problem of convincing my constituency that climate change is real.
Sure.
But just to give you an example, I'll use the banning of plastic bags as an example. And we were the largest city on the East Coast of the United States to do that. And we brought our local business associations and retail establishments in. We can pass all kinds of policies and ordinances at the government level, but it's the people living in our city that have to deal with them, right? So we wanted to make sure that we got our business community on board, explaining to them why banning plastic bags was an important environmental step, and then working with them to figure out how are we going to help offset the cost impacts that they're going to, that will impact them, so that we're not impacting their bottom line. So there's a 10-cent fee for buying a bag in Cambridge, which that money goes back to the retailer to help offset the costs of banning plastic bags. So that's just a quick example. But again, it's about bringing people to the table and pulling in the same direction.
How long did it take for you to implement that?
Well, some fits and starts. we have 2-year terms in Cambridge, and sometimes as the council changes over, things that you make some progress and then you take some steps back. So it had been talked about for probably about 6 or 8 years, and different councils took different levels of action, but once this current council took effect, we passed it rather quickly.
How's rather quickly?
Probably within the first 6 to 8 months of
6 to 8 months.
But we also took a year to implement. So we passed it, and then we said it's going to go into effect a year later, and during that time was continued conversation with the community.
So a year to implement, and now how long has it been?
About 2 or 3 years, 4 years.
3 years? Yeah. What's the assessment now, 3 years in?
You know, like anything when you're talking about change, you know, the sky's going to fall. Oh my God, we're going to get rid of plastic bags. How am I going to live?
Did it fall?
No, it did not.
Okay.
We're used to it now. It's really a non-issue. So you know, sometimes you just have to take that leap and make that change, and you get used to it.
Okay, great. Mayor Appendino, one of the ideas that you can bring here to the forum for us that you have implemented, give us the idea of cost, give us the idea of how long it took to implement as well.
So, for example, in the city of Turin, the infrastructure for recycling in the city had been stopped. It was 2 years that nobody extended it, and we did a 5-year plan to extend it in the whole city. So, by the end of the 5 years, I will have the whole city with the infrastructure for recycling. And what we did is that we built a contest so that the municipality in Turin, in the city, that recycles the most, will have a less taxation the year later. So it's a sort of way that we have a contest. So if you're good at recycling, you have an advantage as a local community, and the next year you will pay less than the others. So we give the infrastructure, which is exactly the possibility to recycle, and we put the community in competition, and the one that does the best will have a taxation advantage the year after. So it's sort of a game, and we are doing also the same thing in the schools, and hoping to, explain, give an infrastructure, and also give a small way to have a reduction the year later on the taxation.
How long did it take for you to implement this?
Well, the whole city, 5 years.
5 years is what you said, okay.
Yes.
Cost?
It's about 15 million euros to infrastructure the whole city.
Great, thank you. Mayor Würzner, as you think about why mayors are the line of defense, if you will, when it comes to climate change and solutions, how do you work with other cities? For instance, when we talk about the transatlantic relationship, how do you get best practices? How do you work together with a mayor that might be in Cambridge, for instance, to take an idea away?
I think we started about 15 years ago with creating new networks like Electricity, like ICLE, like the C40s network, which was greatly supported by Bloomberg, and working together, exchange our experiences. This was at the beginning, the first phase. So examples, changing examples. But what we noticed is these examples are not leading to results. So what we have done then is a clear commitment. So we sign a clear commitment with clear targets. So we wanted to become fossil fuel free. We wanted to achieve to be 2025 green, or in this field or in this field. So what we need is a clear target which will be revolved every second year in the city council, discussed, and then sent to our international network, the Covenant of Mayors. Because if you're doing so, you're coming from the kilowatt hour to the megawatt hour. For example, building efficient buildings. Every city is building efficient buildings. But if it's just examples, they don't care anybody. So what we're doing now is, for example, in Heidelberg, we built over the last 8 years the new city 100% CO2 free. How? We force everybody who wants to build a building in this area to build a fossil fuel free building. So it's a super efficient building. We can force them because we were becoming the landlord. So we can force, if it's not legal from the federal level, to force them to do so. And by doing so, we really could change the megawatt hours. And this is very important to come from the best practice examples to a really movement away from the fossil fuel driven consumption and industry, and that's the way we have to solve the problem, because otherwise the time is running out.
In the environment of the Paris Accord, you did bring it up here, Mayor McGovern. What are some of the ways you work with other mayors to bring good ideas to your town?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the opening, we're part of the We're Still In coalition with cities around the country, around the United States, as well as universities and corporations. Cambridge is also part of a Metro Boston coalition of 14 cities that are all working together to address issues of climate change and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. So it's partnering with other cities, it's setting the example. As I mentioned, some of the things that we've done on a local level in Cambridge, from plastic bags to citywide composting to banning polystyrene, other cities have followed our lead. And so it's about getting out in front and leading, but also making sure that you're bringing other cities, because we know Cambridge can be the most environmentally sustainable city in the world, but it's a grain of sand in the big beach. And so we know that we can do a lot of things, but really the where it hits the road is how do you get other cities, other states, other countries to buy in and do their part as well.
Mayor Appendino, what other grains of sand do you work with around the world as you not only develop best practices for your city, but how you work with these other localities, federal governments, states, what have you, to make your ideas better and stronger, to make a bigger wave, if you will?
Actually, we work at all levels. So, for example, we are working just a few months ago, we signed with Milan and Genova an agreement that all three cities are engaged to reduce 40% CO2 emissions by 2030. We are working with the regional government. It's a bit more difficult because our regional government is at the moment is not so, we're fighting actually. For example, we are saying that we have to block the cars because these have DISA in particular, because this has an important impact, and the regional government wants to they're telling us to take away that block. So there is a bit of a fight with the regional level, but we're working very well with the national level. So we had a very important event, Clean Air Dialogue, for the first time in Italy, for the first time here in Turin, for the minister Costa, where the national government actually put money for 3 years that will arrive to the cities to implement certain things that will help to fight climate change. So it's money on public transportation, it's money on obviously everything that has to do with climate change. So, for example, in our case, we are developing with the national government for the first time in Italy a program where if you change your car because your car is polluting a lot, we don't give you money for a new car that pollutes less, but we give you money to use public transportation, which is very new in Italy. It has never happened, and we're doing it with the national government. So we give you a sort of benefit because you change your car, but you cannot use that benefit to buy a new car, but you have to use it on public transportation. So it's a way to let people change their habits, help them change their habits, and go on public transportation.
If you could take out your phones, one other question before questions and answers. Mayor Appendino, thank you for that. Give me a word or two. How do we tackle climate change? What are the ideas from all of our participants, from your spaces, the ideas that you might bring to this discussion? So if you pull out your phone, we have 60 seconds. In one word, how do we tackle climate change? In one word, how do we tackle climate change? Drastic, nudging, awareness, responsibility, mandates. Awareness, responsibility, personal mandates. Veganism, education. Yes, there we go. 20 more seconds. Ambition, incentives, flying. That's what Mayor Appendino, I thought you were making a statement today because we're on climate change. Carbon, taxes. Great. Very quickly, reaction, 30 seconds, Mayor Würzner, to what you're seeing. Very quickly.
30 seconds. We need more regulation, not only words to implement. I think that's very important.
Great.
And on the other hand, I think we have to show a good example. We as cities and also companies. And there is a clear message from our cities. We're not buying any more stupid buses. If they are not CO2-free, we don't buy them anymore. We buy no electricity if it's not green. So a clear message, anybody who wants to sell something to cities, we're not willing to buy them anymore. clear commitments by the city councils, clear commitments by the cities. This is a message for everybody.
Policy through dollars. Questions from the audience here? I'll come over to you over here. Excuse me. I got it. Okay. Good to see you.
Well, good to see you. My name is Julia Bartel. I'm with the Brunswick Group. Mia Würzner, thanks so much for sharing your experiences, and it's been incredible what you've been doing. You said Heidelberg is a city of activists, and I guess your policies also cater to kind of their positions. Now, what if that is not the case? I'm from a small town in East Germany, and I feel like the debate we're having there is not about kind of energy storage of buildings. It's more about having working schools. It's not about look at that lake, like you said. It's more about look at the holes in the street. And it's not about engaging school children. It's more about keeping them in the cities and keeping them from moving to other parts of Germany. So what is your advice to those? How do you engage people from communities where climate change is not seen as a risk, but rather as a threat?
So clear questions to me. I would say we have to work together. We have totally different positions. We have also totally different responsibilities. If you see that I'm responsible for city utility, for the traffic utility, so I have a great position to change a lot. Not many mayors have such a position. But we have, of course, the situation that in some areas we have, especially in rural areas, not only in Germany, it's all over the world, we have a totally different situation because they need money, they need support. And we have to keep in mind that if the movement is just taking place in some areas, in some cities, which is in Cambridge or in Heidelberg the case, we can't have enough affordable houses anymore because everyone wants to live in those cities, that we have to support those structures. But by doing so, we have to say that we have to solve the problem together and try to engage partnering those projects. For example, we have a city partnership with Bautzen. Bautzen is a city which is quite much under pressure now through right-wing groups. Also, if they have no refugees, Heidelberg has about 80,000 refugees over the last 3 years by a city population of 160,000, and we have no right-wing movement because of a quite good understanding of the population that we have to play a humanity role. And if we are not working globally, this movement will go on, or is just the beginning of a movement which we can't stop then anymore.
Quickly.
Yeah, can I share a quick example? So in Cambridge, there was a group formed called Mothers Out Front. And this was a group that started by 3 or 4 moms that were sitting around a kitchen table talking about the world that we were going to leave to their children. And that group has now become national. It has major partners in Cambridge in terms of the discussion on climate change and a major leader in the state. So, it could take 3 or 4 people sitting around a kitchen table to make a difference. So, I would certainly encourage you to get some people around the table and start having that conversation.
And a kitchen table.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Ida, and I'm from the Young Greens in Sweden. First of all, I just want you all to think about that it's really good that we are discussing climate change at Brussels forums, but there are 2 companies that are sponsoring Brussels forums that are actually destroying our planet. So I just want you to reflect about that. Second of all, I want to talk about policy. This is mostly on national level, but I would really want to hear what you think about it. So the Young Greens in Sweden, we made the government in Sweden to introduce flight taxes in Sweden. And we have had the taxes for 1 year, and we are seeing that the flights are decreasing with 5%, and that a lot of people are taking the train. Is that something that your country maybe should introduce?
Mayor Appendino.
Well, actually, it's difficult to ask the mayor because we don't have that power. But actually, in general, the fact that we can use taxation to change the habits, it's true. So, for example, in my city, we are working at the moment and have a very big fight. In particular, a part of the city is fighting against this. We are introducing a limited traffic zone, a sort of congestion charge, so that you have to pay to go in with the car. And we think that this could change and will change habits and will, let's say, help us to reduce the use of cars and to change to another kind of mobility. So I think at the same way, I don't have really information on how the flight tax could work and how actually it could move. But in our case, in Torino, we have studies that show that if you introduce taxation, you change and can change the habits. So I think that taxation is a good instrument. And in fact, we're working on that on our community level.
Mayor Würzner, how do you not do too much?
I just want to make a comment to this, because we are talking about companies who are destroying the climate.
Yeah.
I think you are absolutely right if those companies are not changing their mind. But we need still those companies. If we don't have any companies, we have no jobs. So if we don't get the awareness of the CEOs, and some are sitting here, that they have to change their fleet into a green fleet, and this is a huge market. If they don't understand that we are fighting for a new green economy, we are not fighting for non-economy. This is a stupid discussion. So by doing so, we notice that those who are going in the lead position to create green buses, fuel cell buses, electro buses, they're taking the lead. And if we look at this, we noticed, hey, the old economy is too sleepy, And we have now companies in China, some in Poland, and some in Netherlands who are producing better electric buses than the former units. So this is a case, if the companies are taking not into account that there is a big movement already and that they have to change their mind.
2 questions on the board. Anybody wants to react to them here? I'll read it out loud. Is a net zero economic sustainable future possible without nuclear energy? The second, the UK has recently halved its national net zero target from 2050 to 2025, which the Chancellor warned would cost the UK £1 trillion. How do you balance economic prosperity with climate action in your cities? Will one always be at the expense of the other? That was sort of a head nod to how do you right size it, right? Because there's only a certain amount of appetite at a certain time.
Yeah. We better get the appetite to address this. And I think some of this, getting back to sort of the, your question earlier, and also about companies, we have companies that, right in Cambridge, that are making a tremendous amount of money. And they need to start thinking not so much about their bottom line and making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and the immediate benefit of that, but where is their company, where is their city, where is the population going to be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years? Something that mayors deal with all the time now. I am so jealous that you have an 8-year term as mayor. Mine is 2. And so, what we deal with all the time is how do we move quickly, because we only have so much time that we are going to be in office, right? But
how do you
we
do
also
that?
have to, but we also have to think about, I can't think just about my 2 years. I have to think about where Cambridge is going to be 25 years from now, 50 years from now. Companies need to start thinking that way too, and many are, but many still are not. And so, yes, maybe there's some immediate economic impact, but I can't speak for Europe, but in the United States, I'm not sure that a CEO needs to make 400% or 500% more than the people that work for their company. So it is sort of changing our view of how much is enough, right? And where are we going to be in 50 years? You can have all the money in the world, but in 50 years, if we're underwater, it's not going to help you much.
2 questions here.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mohammed Saifuddin. I'm an elected official at the City of Alexandria. I'm a councilman, home of George Washington. To our European friends, China just implemented a rule where they're no longer accepting American recycles. I'm not sure if that affected you guys or how you dealt with it if they did implement that. To our American Cambridge, have you dealt with the LEED certification for public versus private development, and how did that go, and which one did you adopt?
All right, hold on. I got another question right across the way here. So you can pick which question you're answering.
Hi, my name is Merve from Finland, and as a vice councillor myself, I do agree that it is extremely important for us to act at a local level, but also at the same time, we all know that it's also important for us to influence our parliaments, our governments, our countries. And for example, in Finland, the 6 biggest cities get together to meet from time to time and discuss these issues. So I would like to know that, do you, in a way, try to influence your governments to actually take bigger steps, and if so, how?
Okay.
Who would like to take any of those?
Well, I'll just go real quick. We do require LEED certification on municipal buildings, and we do push our private developers to do the same. I'm going to look to my gold. I'm going to look my partner in crime over here, who does all the work. Yeah.
Is it gold for both public and private?
Yeah.
Or how long have you had that in place? We just voted last week on it.
I don't know, how long, Suzanne?
So the standard for municipal buildings is fossil fuel free, so way beyond gold. So we've tasked ourselves to go fossil fuel free for municipal buildings, so that's where we're at. And the gold standard has been a requirement for probably a year now.
And let the record show the gentleman from Alexandria did a thumbs up to the gold.
Great.
Yeah, let the record show.
Okay.
Please.
A quick comment. I think it's very important to notice that not only the cities or the regions can solve the problem. So we are really on the ground, but we need the state level, of course, and we need the national level like the EU. So that's exactly what we do. We just had a big conference, the Eckart, International Conference on Climate Action, 4 weeks ago in Heidelberg, where we first time tried to bring those partners together. Because what we noticed is that there is a coming up understanding that cities are also lead partners, not an NGO level. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why we said if a UN conference is taking place, cities have to be sitting on the same table as equal partners, which is not the case till yet, and that we send out a clear message. We wanted to get rid out of subsidies for fossil fuel industry partners, and that we wanted and that we need an energy pricing. We call it an energy pricing to get the money for those trillions or billions, because otherwise we have to spend it for adaptation.
So we've reached the end of this fantastic conversation, and I would like all of our mayors, if you don't mind, to do something which you do not like to do. If you could, your closing statement in 15 seconds, that would be great. I will start with the mayor that said, don't do this to me first. Mayor Würzner, please, 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
Yes.
So let us not talk, let us take action. Everybody on his field, and then we achieve really big results. Thank you.
He was ready. See, he was ready. Mayor Appendino, if you can, 15 seconds to close us up here.
We have to change our habits, and everybody has to change his own way of approaching the thing, and we don't have to fear the change. First of all, before asking what others have to do, ask ourselves what we have to do and change every day our own habits. That's the only way.
All right. And Mayor McGovern, 15 seconds.
Something I often say in Cambridge is it's easy to be a good progressive until you're asked to sacrifice something for it. So sacrifice, urgency, action.
A
Less
warm
than
round of
15
applause.
seconds.
There you go. Very well done for our mayors. Mayor Appendino, thank you so much. Mayor Würzner, thank you so much. And Mayor McGovern, fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
Now, for all of you, if you could put your attention to the screens, we have a short video for you.